Hello friends, welcome to Notebook. This particular lesson discusses workers and the meaning of employment. Also, the video will discuss types of workers, workers' distribution according to urban and rural areas, and ways by which people participate in industries. Friends, what is the purpose of employment? Why do we work? People work to survive, to fulfill their basic needs, and to get a better lifestyle. Mahatma Gandhi says, our country will grow only when we promote more labor and not machinery. If all work is to be done by machines, then laborers would be left with no work. So, balance of the workforce and use of machinery is key to the success of any economy. Countries who have severely mechanized their workforce have severe shortages in the labor force, and hence they had no option but to use machines like the United States and European countries. Let's first discuss the definition of a worker and the meaning of employment. Workers are people who are engaged in some kind of a productive activity, either with providing services or producing goods. A productive activity is an activity that adds economic value to a system. This is the demand side, workers' employment. Employment is the supply side. Employers hire workers for work to fulfill their business needs, and this in turn enables a person to earn a means of living. As we all know, workers are available in both rural and urban areas. It's only the kind of work that differs in different areas. If you look at distribution of employment by region, you will notice that there are more self-employed workers in the rural areas compared to urban regions. Urban areas show a significantly better percentage of salaried employees for the availability of various forms of employment in cities and towns. The pie chart here shows that workforce distribution is naturally not same across all regions. The mix of workforce depends on several factors: type of employment available, kind of viable occupations in a particular region. There are about 42% of regular salaried employees in urban areas compared to 9% in rural areas, simply for the lack of employment opportunity in the latter. Let's therefore look at the economics of workers and employment. What does a workforce entail? And typically, what would be the male-female gender distribution in a particular workforce? These are critical aspects to be considered while we are learning about employment and workforce issues. In India, the worker-to-population ratio for men is 52.7%, while for women, it is 29.2% in rural areas. Back in 2000, urban figures showed 51.8% in male and 13.9% in females. So this means that although the percentage involvement of men was consistent in rural and urban areas, women seem to have better prospects of employment in the rural than urban areas. In other words, women were better employed in rural than urban areas. Principal reason for this could be that women have several domestic errands to take care of, and in general, they are paid inferiorly than men. Hence, they are discouraged from work at the household level. Men are also better suited or skilled in some occupations than women. Friends, why don't you explain to me what you understood by the term worker-population ratio used here? Of course, from common sense, you might have understood that it is the percentage of workers among the total population who are engaged in work. More specifically, worker-population ratio of men would be equal to total number of men engaged in work divided by the total population. Similarly, for women, it would be number of women engaged in work divided by the total population count. The worker to population ratio has declined in India since 2000. Looking at 2018 figures, it stands at 46.8%. This means that lesser number of people have been participating in mainstream labor force as they have been diversifying into other kind of work or moving out of the country. However, gender-wise disparity in employment still persists. Female unemployment rates now stand at 8.7% and male at about 4%. These values are given as percentage of labor force. The total unemployment rate as per figures in 2015-16 is 5% in India. Therefore, gender gap in employment is still an issue. So friends, what do you know about the rate of employment? How will you define it? The definition of rate of unemployment is given by number of people unemployed of the given labor force. So if you have 10 people employed in a village of 100, the rate of unemployment would be 90%. Here, you need to specifically remember that total labor force would be equal to people engaged in work with a job plus job-seeking people plus unemployed available for work, which is equal to 100 in this given example. Let's now identify different types of workers in the labor force. We know that some workers stand to be self-employed and others are hired. A farmer who works on the fields to yield crops are self-employed workers. School teachers instead working for schools, institutions or organizations are hired workers who are paid salaries or wages as reward for their work. So these are the two main categories of workers: self-employed and hired. Now, hired workers could be further classified into casual or the regular kind. Workers who are generally not on payroll or employed permanently without medical or other social benefits are considered to be casual workers. Regular workers, on the other hand, are hired on a permanent basis and enjoy all kinds of medical and social benefits that the institution they work for are willing to offer. Can you think of one example of a casual worker and one of the regular kind? Okay, here it is. If you think of contracted workers working in construction sites or factories, they are casual workers. These workers are called for work as required by employers on a contractual basis. On the other hand, a chartered accountant employed by a firm can be classified as a regular worker, as he enjoys all the benefits due to employment. In addition to his agreed salary, regular workers are those whom we see regularly attending office. Employment is generated in three main sectors in all structured economies. They are the primary, secondary, and tertiary sectors. Primary sectors are sectors that make direct use of natural resources like agriculture, forestry, fishing, and mining. People like farmers, fishermen, and beekeepers are people working in the primary sector. The next sector is the secondary sector and includes construction and production. These industries are into the business of making finished products for consumers. Sugarcane is converted into sugar, tomato into tomato sauce, and wheat into wheat flour in the secondary sector. Finally, we have the tertiary sector. Whenever you think of performance, productivity, potential of work and sustainability, you think of the tertiary sector. So this sector in particular emphasizes on the delivery of quality and quantity of products in an organized manner and involves production of services. It involves office jobs and management of operations. You should be able to quickly differentiate between sectors when you think of occupations. Fishing, farming, and mining as primary. car factories, breweries, and all kinds of mills, secondary, banks, retail shops, and restaurant as services. So my friends, I hope you will always remember that employment is generated in these three sectors. As per 2011 and 2012 figures, you can further note that in India, the primary sector is dominant in rural areas. The secondary is partly dominant in rural and partly in urban, while the tertiary sector is dominant only in the urban sector. There are two main figures that you should notice in the table. About 64% of the workforce are dependent on the primary sector in rural areas, and about 58.3% depend on the services sector in urban areas. A sector-wise contribution to GDP in 2012 shows the service sector making the highest contribution. That's all in this session. With this, we hope to conclude our session for today. We'll be happy to see you in our next videos. I hope you have enjoyed the lesson, and goodbye.